Chapter 822, Another. I knew it. Miss Justice wouldn't not ask when she sees an additional card. I got through another question so easily. Klein secretly smiled as he casually flipped over the new card of blasphemy, showing it to Justice. Tyrant. As expected, Jayaman Sparrow has handed it over. That was Mr. Fool's goal. Alger eagerly glanced at Emperor Roselle in a papal tiara as he thought poignantly. He had already obtained the cataclysmic Intra potion formula, and he knew what ritual was needed. He was in a great mood and felt that, although there were obstacles ahead of him, he was filled with radiance and hope. Audrey quickly took in the details of the card of blasphemy. Tyrant card? It looks like it's the sailor pathway. How I envy Mr. Hanged Man. Mr. Hanged Man doesn't seem alarmed or surprised. From a psychological point of view, his reaction should have been greater than mine. He was already aware that it was the Sailor Pathway's card of blasphemy. Eliminating all other impossibilities, this is the only explanation. But how did Mr. Hanged Man know of it ahead of time? Sequence 0, Tyrant. The potion name corresponding to the Lord of Storms is Tyrant. This Tyrant card was likely in the form of the Hierophant. However, the actual meaning has certain discrepancies with some similarities. Some of it is inversed, and some are just an extension. In short, the interpretation of the card is that of a conservative view, an emphasis on submission at the level of the soul. By relying on dominance and strength, fear is created to bring about faith. Audrey, who had liked mysticism from a young age, interpreted it as she felt a strong sense of satisfaction. She felt that the payment of 3 Roselle diary pages was especially worth it. Card of blasphemy, Being equally good at interpretation and being knowledgeable, Katlia also quickly figured out the pathway in which the card represented. She also managed to add sequence 0, Tyrant, to the gaps in her knowledge. Apart from these facts, she also made a connection. The world Jayaman Sparrow plotted the death of sea god Calvatua, thus allowing Mr. Fool to obtain that scepter representing sea god's authority and begin answering believers in the name of sea god. This time, he obtained the Tyrant card of the Storm Pathway. It's definitely no coincidence. As she thought about the matter, Katlia was suddenly alarmed, suspecting that Mr. Fool was secretly attempting to erode away the Lord of Storms' authority. A battle between gods, it's a massive plan that has a far-reaching influence. This is one of the true goals of Mr. Fool. As thoughts flashed through Katlia's mind, she retracted her gaze and stopped looking at the Tyrant card. Fors and Emlyn didn't understand much about Sequence 0. They had only heard Mr. Fool mention it once at a previous tarot gathering. Therefore, they were only surprised that it was a card of blasphemy. They also began to link the name Tyrant and the Sequence 0's potion name to the Lord of Storms. The former began trembling a little, feeling as though she was being sacrilegious. As for the latter, he began imagining and guessing what was the name of the artificial vampire pathway's Sequence 0. It must be Moon, or Crimson Moon. Emlyn's mind raced as he came to an answer. As for whether it was correct, he didn't mind it at all. He just felt that it was definitely close to the truth. Having grown up in the City of Silver, Derek had received quite a solid education in mysticism. He wasn't unfamiliar with the concept of Sequence 0, and he had even aimed his sights to becoming one at that level. Only by doing so could he bring the City of Silver out into the light and warmth so as to bring hope and a future. This likely represents Elf King Soniathrim, so it's called Tyrant. However, his authority seems to be a little more than what the card represents. Derek thought as he participated in the ongoings of the tarot, gathering in a rare instance. After showing it for 2 seconds, the Fool Klein covered the Tyrant card again before casually glancing at Ma'am Hermit. Katlia hurriedly said, "Honorable Mr. Fool, there aren't any new Roselle diary pages this time." As expected. Klein nodded gently and said with a smile, "That's all from me." Just as he said that, the world Jayaman Sparrow looked at the Hanged Man. "After this gathering, I'll send you that Ocean Songster's Beyonder characteristic. Can you find an artisan to create an easily portable mystical item? Another Ocean Songster Beyonder characteristic." The same thought surfaced in the minds of Audrey, Emlyn, and company. Powerful sequence, 5 Beyonders weren't carrots that you could easily buy on the street. And Mr. World had killed several in the past 2 months. Which Quays, high-ranking member of the Church of Storms, met harm this time. Catlia started off with her conjecture that Mr. Fool was attempting to erode away the Lord of Storms' authority as she came to such a thought. Fours became increasingly fearful of Jayaman Sparrow, as she kept warning herself not to use the 2 pages with demigod-level Beyonder powers. Derek couldn't help but think back to how City of Silver teams would clear a region of monsters. In that dark environment of despair, the number of Sequence 5 main ingredients and Beyonder characteristics were few and far between. There were even instances where there weren't any at times. "All right," Alger, who had already made the promise, calmly replied without mentioning the artisan's fees. This made people like Audrey and Catlia notice something. They suspected that Mr. World and Mr. Hanged Man had secretly cooperated and negotiated on certain matters. This coincided with Audrey's belief that the Hanged Man had the knowledge that the card of blasphemy was the Tyrant card, making her guess that the Tyrant card might have been one of the spoils of war that they had obtained in a private partnership. Without waiting for them to ask about anything they needed, the World Jayaman Sparrow surveyed the area whilst under Klein's control. "I have here another Beyonder characteristic of a Sequence 5 Mentor of Disorder from the Black Emperor sequence pathway. It can be made into a mystical item, and it should possess the power to use the loopholes found in order so as to distort the words, will, and actions of a target. It can also raise one's physical state and create a certain degree of chaos and confusion to the surroundings." He described it in such detail because his target clients were Miss Justice and Ma'am Hermit. It was impossible for the 2 of them to switch to the Black Emperor pathway, so their requirements for Beyonder characteristics were naturally for a mystical item. Of course, the latter had subordinates, so it was possible to purchase Beyonder characteristics for her organization's members. Another one, and it's Sequence 5. What major event did Mr. World do last week? Audrey instantly forgot to generate interest in the Beyonder characteristic. Catlia, Emlyn, and company exchanged looks, puzzled as to which Sequence 5 Beyonder met harm again. Again. What Alger cared about was that this belonged to the Black Emperor pathway, a Sequence 5 Mentor of Disorder. The latter was something he wasn't previously aware of. After nearly 20 seconds of silence, Audrey began to ruminate over Mr. World's words. Use loopholes found in order. Create chaos and confusion, raise one's physical state, and distort a target's speech, will, and actions. It seems to be very compatible with my dear Earl Hall. Besides, I also want to have such powers. I still have too many shortcomings just by relying on myself and lie. I should figure out the price first and find a chance to ask Father. Let's see if he's interested in buying such a mystical item for himself or his adorable daughter." Audrey thought for a few seconds before raising her hand slightly. "Mr. World, what do you plan on exchanging it for? Or how much do you plan on selling it for?" A reasonable price for a ready-made mystical item like Death Knell costs £10,000 to £12,000. Just the Beyonder characteristic alone will be cheaper. It will be about £7,000 to £8,000. Klein had already done the math. Now, after some thought, he made the World Jayaman Sparrow reply, £8,000. He knew that if Miss Justice was really interested, she wouldn't haggle. "Okay." Audrey nodded and turned to look across the table. "Mr. Hanged Man, roughly how much would it cost to pay the artisan to turn such a Beyonder characteristic into a mystical item?" Alger quickly did the math and said, £1,500 at the very least. It might be higher. "All right." Audrey shifted her gaze and said to the World Jayaman Sparrow, "I'll consider it for a few days and give you an answer by the end of the week. You can continue asking if anyone else wants it." The World nodded in silence as he looked at the other members. He noticed that Ma'am Hermit hesitated for 2 seconds but ultimately kept silent. As for the rest, they were only watching with interest. Just as Audrey was about to ask about the fruit of the illusory chime tree, all the members heard the World Jayaman Sparrow hoarsely say, "There's another Sequence 5 Beyonder characteristic from the Planter pathway, Druid." Suddenly, the palace that looked like a giant's residence turned extremely quiet. Apart from Mr. Fool, who continued observing everyone in a leisurely manner, the hanged man Alger didn't show any additional thoughts. Another, when did sequence 5 Beyonder characteristics become so common? What did he do? Katlia suddenly felt baffled. She felt that the risk and hard work she had put in over the years was, in essence, no different to the commercial goods the world J.M. and Sparrow was selling. It's terrifying. Fours had already begun imagining a series of stories. Impressive. Derek idolized Mr. World even more. Audrey and Emlyn remained silent for a long time, momentarily finding themselves suffering from a lack of vocabulary. After nearly 10 seconds, Katlia realized the hidden meaning behind the world J.M. and Sparrow's words. He didn't mention the effects of what the Druid Beyonder characteristic can have after being made into a mystical item. He's asking me if I'll buy it for Frank. At that instant, Katlia felt an unprecedented dilemma.